Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first episode on a new show that we're launching called the Colorado Real Estate Investing Show. And I'll warn you that is a working title. It may change in episode 3 or 10 or 22. Anyway, it's going to be hopefully a new type of talk show and live streaming we're doing here in Denver. So I'll be one of the hosts. My name is Chris Lopez. I'm a real estate agent at Your Castle. I also run the DenverInvestmentRealEstate.com website. And I've got my friend here, Tim Emery of ICOR. And I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about some ideas and how we could do some more collaboration together, leverage our strengths and networks and interest and knowledge base. And Tim had a cool idea. What AM style talk radio show is the best way to say it?
It's kind of like sports talk radio, go back and forth and really talk about real estate focused stuff because I host another podcast on the ICOR Rockies radio podcast and I interview people, which is fun and I get to ask questions, but I wanted something more because all I listen to in my car is sports talk radio and podcasts, of course. Chris's podcast, as a matter of fact, but that's what I do. Every once in a while I listen to music because the kids get annoyed with my talk shows, but I think there's something that we need to really loosen up. We need to loosen up real estate investing, and we need to create it into a great way for people to learn more about it because we know how intimidating real estate investing is, especially for new people and people just getting into it. And we also know how intimidating it is to take that next step if you don't have somebody pushing you or taking you to the next level. So I think this is a great thing. And, like Chris said, we were sitting around talking, hey, let's figure out how to do this. And Chris is the technician. You're the producer. You set all this camera stuff up. It's great. Thank you very much. I love it.
Oh, you bet. And, part of the reason I like the idea, Tim, is just, I agree with you. Like, I think the conversations, especially like sports talk, is it's so interesting sometimes, especially when I've been in, the main businesses I've been in over the years have been like marketing and real estate stuff. And I've always learned the most, usually not from like the event itself. I go to a networking event or from the class itself. It's what happens after the event where, especially for a new person, it's like being the fly on the wall. Everyone's having a beer, sitting around having a beer and they get to chit chat or having a cup of coffee or grabbing ice cream afterwards, whatever. It's kind of like the off the cuff, loose stuff where there's 2, 5, 6, 8 people sitting there talking, and you can learn so much from just people, some of it's bickering, some of it's fun, some of it's education, but I learned so much that way. And that's one of our goals here is to replicate that. So our idea is to bring on some future guests, just different people around town that we can talk with them, pick their brains, have some friendly debates. And also we want to make it a very live centric event. So we'll be doing Facebook, maybe Instagram live stream. We'll do the webinar. So as we build this up, we want you guys to ask questions, interact with us, and make it a really interactive talk show. And rather than dialing in, you guys can text in or Facebook in or whatever that term is. So, Tim, let's get this started. I mean, we picked this topic today of landlord horror stories because you just taught a class or workshop a couple days ago this past weekend, right?
Right.
So set us up for it.
Yeah.
Set it up for us.
So I teach a bulletproofing your rentals class, and my background is I coach and mentor also. I have a company called Invest Success, which is a local coaching mentorship program. So we coach people how to fix and flip real estate here in the greater Denver area. We will have a new announcement coming out next week about some expansion, but it's not quite ready for public knowledge yet. But what we do is I also used to run Sticks and Stones property management. So we built a property management company starting in 2011 from 20 properties up to 220 when I left. And boy, do we have some stories. We have some tips and tricks that we can bring in. And I like to talk about it because it is one of the greatest ways to get rich slowly. It's one of the greatest ways to get rich. And for everybody who's afraid of landlording or thinks of this stuff, yeah, there are a lot of horror stories out there. I'm not going to lie. But there are also a lot of success stories. Met a kid last night, kid named Alan at a badass realtor meetup with Dan Macklin. I think his name's Macklin. Dan, if I screwed that up, I'm sorry, buddy. Yeah. But it was great. And he was talking about landlording. He was afraid to become a landlord. I'm like, you can't be afraid to become a landlord. You got to be a landlord. If you're going to invest in real estate, you got to be a landlord, because the real truth of the matter is 10 years, you want people putting a check into the bank while you're sitting on a beach, or you're sitting in the mountains, or you're fishing or hiking, or doing something you enjoy, because that's the way we can enjoy our lives. So that is where the antithesis of today went. So we're going to start with those good stories and then kind of go into those bad stories.
So I gotta ask you one question first, since you've got way more experience in managing properties and dealing with tenants than I do. So you always hear that classic, well, you don't want to be a landlord because you'll get that 2 a.m. phone call that the toilet is clogged up. So have you ever actually gotten a call in the middle of the night about a clogged up toilet? Has that happened?
No.
Okay.
That did not happen. But I did get a call in the middle of the night about a fire at a property.
Well, that's a little bit more urgent, and I understand that call at 3 a.m. That is really important.
Although, the interesting thing about the fire on the property, what can I do about it at 3 a.m.? I'm not a fireman.
You can call 911.
You damn straight. You better call 911. And usually 911's already there and been called. Yeah, I can come out and see what's going on. I can help you figure that out. But here's the trick that you need to do with your tenants when you have something like that. They should have renter's insurance, so they're covered if something like that happens, and they can go get a hotel room. It's that simple. It is that simple. So it is something you need to do. That fire actually was an interesting deal. We bought a 10-plex for a guy, helped him set it up, get it managed, and it was actually being on-site managed by somebody, and we took it over. And after the sale, and we were like, okay, we'll keep this on-site manager there. She seems to be doing an okay job. We had her there for 2 weeks, and my friend Lance and I, who were working together on this, were at the property and heard her yelling at her 3 or 4-year-old granddaughter, just screaming at her, just awful stuff. Lance knocks on the door and says, and I won't use her real name, says, Josie, don't ever touch your children like that, and you can move out. And Josie says, oh, okay. Well, we found out later on, Josie had her daughter staying in one of the units, had friends staying in other units, and was not passing on 3/4 of the rent she got.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
So the first horror story is not about a tenant. It's about the on-site property manager.
Yeah. So we moved her out. A week and a half later, we had a fire in the exterior laundry room.
How'd the fire start?
We aren't sure. It seems like it was in the trash can, and we could say belief would be, that somebody threw a cigarette out or something like that. We don't know, though. We never did find out. So we had insurance, we had Belfour, we had fire department. It was a learning lesson. This was one of my first bigger properties, so it was great. But these stories, those are few far between. You go back to that toilet question. Out of the 4 years I ran property management, I probably had 5 calls in the middle of the night, and that's it. I'd have some later evening calls, 6, 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night, but mainly it was during work hours. And the reasons for that, you got to set people up for success. If you don't set them up for success, they will be a pain in the neck.
You're talking about the tenants.
Yeah.
Like setting up your tenants for success, and laying ground rules and giving them authority to do stuff besides call you.
Well, no, not giving them ground rules. You don't give them the ability to do anything. You don't want your tenants doing anything on your property. You want your tenants to be able to understand what needs to be done. Like we gave them in case of an emergency list. Here's what an emergency is. Here what it is not an emergency. Your toilet plugged up at 2 o'clock in the morning is not an emergency. Go get a plunger and plunge it. The heat not working at 3 o'clock in the morning could or could not be, but have you changed your furnace filters? And can you wait till the next morning? And we'll bring your, if it's -0 or 0 degrees, then yeah, we're over there at 2 o'clock in the morning with space heaters and getting over there. I have a lot of space. I had a lot of space heaters in my house ready to go at a moment's notice. Because you can't always get the HVAC guy out there, but we set them up for success. And that's one of the keys. But, Chris, you said, let them do things. Now, a lot of landlords, a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what you do with yours, but
no.
a lot of people do that. No, good. But a lot of people want their tenants, fixing things and doing that type of stuff. Doesn't work. They become liable. If you have a property and you tell that, certain things are good, you can have them, mow the lawn because it's their property. You can have them shovel. They need to shovel. But to get them on the roof to fix a gutter, don't do it.
You've not had landlords tell their tenants to go on the roof to fix the gutter,
Oh, absolutely. All the time.
Really?
Yes. I'm telling you, landlords, we talk about tenants being bad and horror stories. I have more horror stories about landlords than I do tenants. And people coming to us with properties and their tenants are like, this landlord does this landlord does that. I'm like, what?
You know what? I believe that now because, I have walked my fair share of properties to, show them and look at them for investors. And a lot of times it's one investor selling to another investor. And I'm trying to think of a polite way to say this, but actually, there's no polite way. I've just walked in some dumps where I'm like, how do you treat your tenant like that? Like, I get you're not best friends with your tenant, but I believe in you are providing a service and you want to treat that customer as a client and keep that client happy. Because I know when I've been a tenant before, the landlord's nice to me. I'm a lot nicer to the property, a lot nicer back to the landlord, and vice versa. You make a much better two-way street versus making the person's life miserable.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just dumb business. What other business do you do that in where you piss on your customer?
Right.
Besides okay, maybe Dish TV. You guys are a Dish TV. Besides their business model, no one else.
That's the whole slumlord thing. Boggles my mind. How do you become a slumlord of a property? How do you let a leak go? How do you let mold go? How do you not take care of your people because you're cheap? And how do you not help people be successful? And we used to pick up properties from landlords that were sick of being landlords and stuff like that. And we'd walk into them like, why haven't you fixed this? Oh, well, why didn't you fix this? Is the smoke detectors working? No, they were supposed to replace it. Well, if they don't, it's your responsibility. And more stuff came from landlords than we dealt with the tenants. The tenants that you treated well were great. They paid their rent on time. They were quiet. It was when you cheapened out and when you didn't do stuff that is really when it happened. So for all you landlords out there, pull your head out of your rear end and go take care of your properties. And don't be cheap. You'll make more money in the long run than you will saving a couple $100 or doing something halfway.
Or, from my point of view, it's not just a couple $100 and do all that stuff. But my always big concern is just I want to minimize all the chances of the big what if scenarios, those what if scenarios where you get sued and you get sued for everything you're worth and get wiped out. That's the stuff that I worry about. Hey, an extra $50 because I'm going to have to repair something. I don't think it's a big deal. The big deal is, I didn't bother with checking the smoke detectors. I didn't bother with
fixing that stair.
Yeah, fixing that stair, and then the little kid falls off. And number one, geez, you got a little kid hurt on your property, which is horrible.
Right.
Number two, you're gonna get sued, and you're gonna lose that lawsuit.
Right. Right. No matter how much they're responsible for it, and how much you put on the tenant, you are still ultimately responsible.
Yeah. And that's always my concern. Is just how do I avoid that $1 million mistake?
Right.
Not the $100 mistake, not the $500 mistake. I can write a check for that. But the $1 million mistake, my net worth can't handle that.
Yeah. and the reality of those situations is no matter how much you're in the right as the landlord and you think you're in the right, if you stand in front of a judge or a jury and lawyers are good at making you look bad. no matter how much stuff you have, it's an opinion of either one person or a jury. And most of the times you could lose because you're taking advantage of somebody, because you didn't do something right, because you didn't follow through, something like that. It's very rare that, that happens, but why take the chance? Why take the chance for the landlord to say, no, you got to take care of it? Bed bugs is one of those things. Bed bugs and roaches. We dealt with this quite a bit. Until I started landlording, I had no idea we had roaches in Colorado. None. Never seen them. Didn't even think about it. We have cockroaches in Colorado. They're a lot smaller than you'd think. They almost look like crickets.
We don't have the big fat
3-inch
ones.
I've been told we do, but I haven't seen any.
Yeah.
These are little guys. But they come out, if you don't take care of your property, if you keep your place dirty and stuff like that, you're probably going to get them. And it doesn't matter if the place was spotless when the tenant moved in. If they get infested with roaches, even if it's their fault, a judge is going to sit in front of you and say, you need to go take care of this. It's ultimately your responsibility. Think about that. It's ultimately your responsibility to take care of everything on your property, no matter what the tenant did. So remember that, guys.
All right, guys. So I know we got some people joining us live on Facebook and the webinar platform. So if you guys got questions, put them in there. If you got your versions of tenant horror stories or other landlord horror stories, type them in here. We'll definitely share those. And before we hit go live today, Tim, you were talking about an interesting conversation you had, I think over the weekend, about how some people screen their tenants.
Mm-hmm.
Where they actually, I guess part of the screening process is they actually go visit their prospective tenant in their current place where they're living to see
how they live.
So like basically like kind of like cleanliness, and if they're a slob, is that type of what they're looking for?
Yeah.
Which brought up an interesting question. Like that's okay. What are the pros and cons of doing that as a property manager or as a a landlord self-managing?
It was an amazing conversation because I see the point of why you would do it, because it gives you a huge picture of what's going on in their lives. Because here you got one of the biggest assets that you own, and you're about to give it to somebody else and hope they're going to take care of it. So you want to do all your due diligence to figure out if they're going to be a good tenant, if they're going to pay their rent on time, how they're going to treat your property. You really need to do that. But there's some steps that you have to follow because of guidelines set by the federal government, state government. Fair Housing Act is a huge one.
And one you do not want to mess with.
No, you cannot discriminate because, and I'll forget half the things, but race, color, religion, creed, familia status, what are the other? Look it up.
More
look it up on HUD. Look it up on HUD.
Yeah.
On the HUD website. But you can't discriminate. So you got to be careful with what you can ask. As a property manager, when we would get reference calls or we'd call other people to get reference calls, as a property management company, we can only ask like 4 questions. Did they pay their rent on time? Did they have any damages? How did they leave the property? And would you rent to them again? That's all we can ask.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that like what the government says? Is that what your lawyers say? Hey, you ask these questions to make sure you don't get in any gray area.
Yep. And one of the tips I tell people is always get 2 landlord references, the one they're currently living at and the one before that as well. The one currently they're living at will probably tell you decent things and say, yep, they paid on time. Yep, they were clean. Yep, I'd rent to them again. The 2 landlords back will say, oh no, they were slobs, or they did this damage, or they did that damage, or something like that. So if you really want to get that, go back 2 landlords.
So I want to go back around to this question of people, screening their tenants by actually going to their current place. Now, I'm assuming, because I know you said there were a couple people in your workshop that do it that way. I'm assuming they're all just, self-managing landlords, not,
Yes.
Official property management companies where they're managing other people's properties. Could you imagine an instance where you, as a property manager or another property manager, actually running their business that way and doing that? Like, I can't imagine a lawyer saying that's a good idea.
Well, and interesting enough, I have a call right now into Springman, Braden, Wilson, Pontius to find out the legality of doing that. From my point of view, as a real estate agent and property manager, I don't think there's any way that I can justify going to somebody's house. And, you go to somebody's house, you see personal stuff, you see personal items, and you can make a judgment call based on what you see. And there should be no judgment in what we're doing because it's a fact-based acceptance. And that means that can they pay the rent? And as somebody building a landlord company or becoming a landlord, you have to set up a set criteria that you judge everybody on. Okay. So, income, you got to come up with a price for income. You have to figure out what credit score is, have a minimum credit score. You have to have all these minimums that they have to pass. And if they pass everything, you pretty much have to let them in. If they don't pass something, then you can deny them, but they've got to pass all that criteria, and that criteria has to be written out so that you don't get in trouble, because otherwise you become judgment, and then it's he said, she said, and back to the court. You got to go to court. Judge looks at you and goes, hey, you're a wealthy guy. You've got all these properties. You're discriminating against her, and you'll lose. You'll lose a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't imagine. Like, I'm assuming like the landlords aren't going to the prospective tenant's house for every phone call they get. I'm assuming they're probably going through part of the application process first. Because if I live down south and you live up north, Tim, I'm checking out to see where you currently live. I don't want to drive 2 hours until I've, probably checked some references, pulled your credit, checked your criminal background, and all that stuff where it's like, do they meet my written requirements of a 680 credit score and three times income to rent, yada yada yada. So you pass. I go to your place and, oh man, you got you clean and gut your fish in the kitchen sink and you throw the carcass on the couch.
Hey. Just because that's my house.
I'm staring at your hat here. That's why I have to mention it.
My son does that.
Yeah, like I can't write back to you I'm denied because you're a slob. Right. I don't think. No. I mean, like
you can't.
Yeah.
Can't.
And the slob is subjective.
Exactly. Oh. Exactly. My ex-wife thought I was a slob.
We won't go there, man. This is not therapy hour. This is real estate hour.
That's true.
So what is the absolute, okay, so you've managed 200 plus properties per year, right?
Yeah.
So over like a 5-year period?
Yeah, I think 4 years.
Okay, so you've got thousands of hours of tenant hours,
sure.
Probably multiple thousands of hours since you were a full-time property manager. What is the very worst horror story you ever saw? Because you got a way better deck than I do for that.
Yeah.
Or you should.
I do. Luckily for myself, I wasn't part of this. Yeah, my partner and one of our guys working, we had a couple people die in our properties. That was pretty scary. One guy, nobody found out for like 3 weeks because he just doesn't have any friends and nobody talked to him.
So he died in the recliner watching TV or whatever?
Yep, I think so. So luckily I didn't have to deal with that one. That fire was probably one of them, but also got a call. It's interesting when you get a call from a blocked number and the first thing that the guy says, hey, this is agent so-and-so with the ATF. Just want to let you know this is going on in your property. And what do you know about it? Like, what? Yep, we've been watching your property and you've got this stuff going on and it's in this unit. Can you tell us anything about it? No, and I just told him what I knew about the people. He said, okay, we think it's actually a gang who has roped this kid into this, who's renting from you. And do you know where he is? Do you know where he lives, where he works? yeah, he works here. He works, yeah, whatever. So next thing you know, they're like, okay. And then they call me, 3 days later, said, yeah, so we raided the place. They're all out now. We've got them all taken care of. So it's all good now. You probably need to replace the lock on one of the doors, though.
Wow.
Like,
so were they
okay.
raiding for, what?
Drugs.
Firearms or drugs?
Drugs. Wow. Yeah.
So selling or growing stuff?
Selling.
Wow.
Yeah. This was before pot was going on. Do have a pot story that,
So actually, before we do that,
Yeah.
I'm curious. So did you have to remediate the property after that drug bust? Like I know, certain things require remediation. Like I
Right.
know it's a meth lab. You have to remediate the property.
Yeah. It wasn't meth.
Okay.
It was, I think it was cocaine or crack coming through. So they were just keeping it there and then moving it on out.
So just change the locks and clean the place. And
wow. Yep. Yeah. So it was pretty cool, but I've got a direct phone number for ATF now if I need them.
So that was pretty cool. What did the owner of that property say?
He's a pretty laid back guy. He's like, well, all right.
So he took it in stride.
Yeah, he just kept collecting checks and said, I'm glad you're dealing with it.
That'd be my attitude.
Yeah. Like, okay, good. Deal with it. I mean, that's why you hire a property manager. It was, it was a good experience to have. I don't want to do it again, but it was a good experience to have.
Okay.
So,
all right. So you're talking about another story next before I think you mentioned the marijuana story.
Oh, yeah. This is, in real estate and in our careers, we've all had a lot of good successes and some failures, because if we don't have failures, we can't learn. I had a property in South Denver, big house. This gal comes in, says, I want to rent it. Yeah, she was attractive, and her brother were moving out here from Florida, and they were all excited, and she had a job as a sales rep. Blah, blah, blah. I said, okay. She brought us a bunch of money. We put her in there. Everything seemed legit and good. About 4 months later, we stopped getting rent paid. Like, huh. So we sent somebody out there and couldn't find them, couldn't get a hold of them. I went out there a couple days later, knocked on the door. The brother was home. He opened the door, and it smelled like a skunk factory. And I looked at him. I said, what are you doing? He's like, nothing. I said, I'll tell you what. You owe us rent, and I'll be back in a couple hours to collect that rent. Well, within 3 hours, they were on their way moving out. And apparently they built a grow in the basement. They actually cut the power. They rerouted the power before it went into the box and put it into the basement. So the electricity never went through the box. It went straight into the grow.
So it didn't send that alert to where oh, wow, you're using 50 times the amount of power for a house. Yeah.
Yep. So we had to deal with that. And, luckily we got it cleaned up. Luckily there wasn't too much damage. The owners were not happy with us. And it was in a neighborhood. And the funny thing is that being in a neighborhood, you would think the neighbors would have noticed the stench. And
like
this
was that bad. Not
yeah,
just
it was that bad. Yeah. And this, this was before, marijuana was legal here, or right at the beginning of it, when everybody was coming in to build these things. So, that was kind of one of my mistakes, that I did my due diligence on her. Everything had checked out. I just didn't see enough. I think the red flag for me should have been a single girl and a brother moving into a 4-bedroom family house. It just didn't set off flags at the beginning, but after I look back on it, it's like, yeah, she didn't need that big a house, even though she could afford it, apparently.
So everything else checked out on the background, the credit, the criminal, all that looked good. Now I'm curious, I just don't know all the nuances of that. So like, if you do rent, hey, you got a 5-bedroom house and it's 2 people moving in there, I guess, is that at your discretion saying, yeah, you check out, but I don't want to rent to you because why do you need 4 extra bedrooms or 3 extra bedrooms? Like, where does that fall in the whole area of things? Because I'm intrigued by fair housing laws.
Yeah.
But I also stay way out of the gray area.
Sure.
Or I try to, I should say.
I mean, it's a little gray area when you run into that. And it was kind of one of those things where we had to decide what to do, and we didn't have any grounds to bring her out and not allow her to come in. So it was just something that we probably should have seen coming, or something was fishy. But this was back before this stuff was going on, and I gotta say, I believe people are honest and ethical, and I don't know any criminals, at least not that I know of.
Yeah.
So when we found out, it was pretty shocking.
Okay.
So just be careful. But there are other people, and that we've had that were fine with having grows in their basement. Instead of getting $1,400 a month rent, they were getting $3,000 a month rent. So there are some people who were okay with that.
Like they put in, like build that in the lease. So yeah, you can grow, but rents.
I don't know if it's in the lease or not, because back then it wasn't legal.
Yeah.
Now you could probably do that. Although although you can still get in trouble federally.
That's the interesting thing.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Statewide, you're okay as long as they have licenses, but federal, they come down, crack down at any time.
Yeah.
So who knows?
And I would imagine as a landlord, you would get dragged through the mud on that.
I don't know. It would be interesting to see that challenge, though.
Well, I say that because, that's a big, like banks. That's why a lot of banks will not touch anything marijuana related because, yeah, like as you said, it's fine in Colorado, but it's, illegal at the federal level. And I was talking with someone, I can't remember who it was, even had this conversation, but where was it? I want to say it was someone out of Florida. And, Florida last year, I think I might be screwing up my states and laws here, but they passed, they passed medical marijuana law that made a lot, people do it. And there was one bank in Florida, this guy said, that would actually finance properties and lend to marijuana businesses and do stuff in the marijuana world because they were a Florida bank.
Mm-hmm.
But then they got bought out by a regional or a national bank. And overnight they stopped it because they no longer were just playing within their state lines. They're now across state lines. Sure. And they said it's out of our risk portfolio. We're not doing it because we don't want to take that chance of the feds coming in and screwing us over.
Right. And that's a whole different, this is a whole different topic that we probably need to get a marijuana lawyer in here and have this argument, because I don't know those answers either. I was at a triple net meeting yesterday or the other day, and there was a lender talking about that he's okay lending to people, and it's a credit union here, and they're okay lending to the right people in that industry. But he said they did a lot of due diligence on it. So that's a whole nother good thing. We're just starting this because we got all kinds of topics.
Oh, there's
right down that right down that marijuana topic for us.
We could spend months on that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I'd be fascinated to learn more about it.
Yeah. Like I don't want to do anything in that world. I just want to learn about it because it's cool gossip and I get asked about it all the time. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I'd love to do something. I'd love to be part of the financial part of it. I could care less about the smoking part of it or the eating part of it or whatever it is. I could care less. But, if somebody wants to rent my property and the money's right, the numbers are right, and they want to do that, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm all right with that.
And so, that's, what we talk about. I actually did write a note of that. And this is one of the things we want to do with the show. Like I said, this is very much figuring out as we go. And also what Tim said earlier, neither one of us are willing to fail. So if we do an episode or two and it's go as good as we want, well, no big deal. But, so if we fail one or two, we don't care. And that is why we're moving forward in real estate. So that's just a little like personal development side note there, because one of my attitudes is the faster I fail, the faster I succeed, as long as it's not a catastrophic failure. But if you guys have topics or guests or your knowledge base in, marijuana growing or whatever else, sub niche, man, we'd love to have you guys on here. So, or if you're a friend or spouse or colleague or whatever, let us know. Email us, call us.
Yeah. This, it's going to change from day to day. Topics of the month are really good. I'd like to, there are a couple things I really want to do focus on some every month or every time we do this, have a couple things here and there. I told you I was at the badass event the other night, and just talking to new people in this business and new investors, just finding us or finding podcasts or finding Bigger Pockets or ICOR or John Fisher Breakfast Club or Your Castle. There shouldn't be any intimidation coming in to talk to us. We've all done it. We've all been there. We were beginners. We know how that feels. But here's the tip, you guys out there. You got to listen. All right. That fly on the wall that Chris mentioned at the beginning. You got to listen to us. All right. I sat there and listened to a gal talk for 15 minutes and just tell me about her life and everything that she had going on and what was wrong and how she was trying to get into it. 15 minutes. And then all of a sudden, everybody's leaving. She's like, okay, I got to go. She had no idea who I was. She didn't know I was the owner of ICOR. She didn't know I owned Invest Success. She didn't know I used to be a property manager. She didn't know that I network with hundreds and hundreds of people on a weekly basis. She didn't know any of that. I handed her my card. I said, look me up. And she actually started following me on Facebook. Maybe she's listening now. But she talked for 15 minutes herself. And I run into that a lot.
Yep.
So here's a tip. When you're networking, ask the question to somebody else and listen. Ask the question and listen, and you'll hear somebody else tell you stuff. And if you see that they're talking too much, ask another question, and then let them ask you a question. Because that's really one of the keys is having a conversation. Don't be one-sided in this business. You won't learn anything.
Oh man, you open up a can of worms in my mind there, because I agree with you and got a few more tips to add on. But before I became a real estate agent, I used to do a lot of online marketing, and I spent a couple of years doing consulting with people. And this was paid consulting where people would hire me as a consultant or hire me to implement some online strategies. And I was always amazed at the amount of people I get where they are paying me, it was a fairly high dollar per hour value that they would pay me to help them with their marketing. It would be a 45-minute scheduled Skype call. And they would do exactly what you said. They would spend 40 minutes nonstop talking about whatever, this issue in their business, their dog at the veterinarian, what they're doing today. I'm just like, and I would try to get the conversation back on track. But I'm like, if you want to pay me to listen to you, like, all right. I mean, like, that's your money, but like, that's silly. And I find people do it all the time. Yep. Like, especially if you're on experts, do what Tim said, like ask a question. And don't ask a yes or no question. Ask a good open-ended question.
Yes.
My other tip for networking events, because I some networking events I love, some I don't. I like the ones where you can they have topics for presenters you can learn and network. I'm not a big fan of like just go have a beer and hang out and have a happy hour. Like, that's not my style. I feel like it's not a good use of time for me, what I want to look for. But something that I used to do, and I always tell every single person, was, oh, I want to learn this or do that or get into fixing and flipping or investing or whatever it is. Cool, I get that. But they go out to events and they don't tell people what they are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, have a 1 or 2 sentence, commercial or elevator pitch. Not that you're trying to sell them, but say, if you meet someone, say, hi, Tim, my name is Chris. I'm new to Denver. I'm looking to buy my first investment property. Do you know anyone that can help me with finding a property or doing a fix and flip? Like, be very specific, and you'd be amazed. Like, oh yeah, you should talk to, Bob over here or Janice over there, or I can help you with this. Like, let people know what you want and let people know what you need, and then start the conversation. Don't go out there and just say, yeah, I'm here, blah, 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 blah. Go there with a purpose in mind. Tell people what you want. Because I always say a good analogy from a sales book I read years and years ago is, if you're not very specific about what you're looking for, no one's going to give it to you. And the analogy they used was, let's say you're in a movie theater and it's full of people. And so there's 200 people in the movie theater. And if you yell someone's name, if I were in the movie theater and yelled, Tim Emery, you're going to stand up and look around. If I'm very specific in what I'm looking for, I can find you, you'll find me. But if I just yell something generic, no one responds. But if you're very specific, or you call that person's name, not their real name, but like their profession or what they focus on, people will connect you.
Yep. It's great. host the John Fisher Breakfast Club, 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning. But you get 30 seconds to say who you are and what you're looking for. It's that quick and that easy. And if you say what you're looking for and what you do, you will find somebody at the end of the Breakfast Club that will be able to help you connect.
How good are people like giving this 30-second who I am, what I'm looking for?
Some are better than others.
That is such a polite answer, Tim.
Saturday, I'm hosting a Saturday, and I call the ones out that aren't very good at it. But they're usually my guys who've been around for a long time. Between that and, yeah, there are a lot of people that aren't very good at it, but there are a lot of people that are good about it. You got to ask. You got to think about other people and how you can take care of them and get them to the right place. That's huge out there when you go to these events. It is really important to look for that and listen and do that stuff, because the Breakfast Club is one of those events that if you take advantage of it, it'll work for you. Also, the other biggest thing is show up. You got to show up. You got to show up over and over and over again, because if you don't show up, nobody will know your name. And you guys have all that know me and are listening. I always tell you that. I guess you 3 or 4 times before I have any idea who you are. I mean, tell you the truth, Chris and I met a bunch of times, and I had no idea who he was. I finally figured it out after you were on the bus tour with you and Charles. I was like, oh, that's Chris. I had no idea who Chris was.
4th time is a charm, right?
The 4th time.
A charm.
Yeah. So, now look at us doing this.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, and Tim and I are sharing these tips not because we're not laughing at people or discouraging people. We're sharing these tips because we've been on the other side of the corner. It's like, wow, I've been to my share of events where I've wasted time, where I've not asked good questions. I've not listened to people. Yep. I've not spoken up and said, hey, this is who I am. Here's what I'm looking for. I've not done the consistent showing up. So we're saying that because we've made those mistakes. We're passing on and say, hey, we've been there, done that. Here are some things how if you do this, it'll get you from point A to point B a lot quicker and a lot better too. Because I can tell you, man, it sucks going to networking events.
Oh yeah,
where you sit there by yourself, you don't talk to people, and you feel awkward the whole time. Yep. And look, I've done that, and I'll probably do again in the future at some point. It sucks, but if you do a couple of those tips, a couple of those things, it can change the game before you meet the right person.
Yeah. And there was a gentleman who came up to me. Actually, he messaged me on Bigger Pockets a couple of days ago, and then I saw him at this event, and he was looking for me. So we talked a little bit about it. He's getting into this. He's got a good head on his shoulders, but he asked me if he could partner with me and go 50-50 on a deal, and he'd do all the work. Well, I appreciate his ask. I really do, but I don't do that. I don't work like that because I'm very valuable, and I have students that pay me a lot of money to get that advice. Also, when it's the first time I've ever met you, I have no idea who you are. If he comes back to me and I see him every month for the next 6 months, and he asks me that question 6 months from now, I will probably say yes. But not when you just show up and see that. And that's something that people have to realize is you got to show up. And hopefully he didn't take that the wrong way and say, oh my God, I can't do this. But it's a good tip because it's showing up and proving that you're going to be here. Chris and I and Charles and Lon and all of us out there, we've got that question all the time. And you got to show up. And once you start showing up and once we know you, then we can really work with you.
Yeah, I relate that to don't look to get married on the first date. Like I learned a lot of my sales and networking skills. One of my first mentors in the business world, great guy, still great friends. We still do stuff together today, but this was, 15 years ago. And I was very naive, but very motivated. I was that classic example, like ignorance on fire. You hear people talk about. I was like, yeah, dude, I'll walk through a wall. I just don't know what to do.
Right.
And the way I learned a lot of networking sales was I related it to dating. And just like And just like the example you got, like that guy's intent was great. Hey, he asked a question, great.
Yeah.
Like he actually asked a closing question,
Oh, yeah.
which I respect. But as you said, there was no like, dude, I know who you are. Like we've been talking for 6 minutes, which I'm not going to go into a business partnership in 6 minutes. And I relate that to like, yeah, like, look, you should not be getting married on the first date, but you got to meet people and realize, and I always use those analogies like that. So yeah, if you guys are out there, like definitely like look for those opportunities, but you got to make sure if you need analogies, don't get married on the first date or don't propose on the first date, because I can tell you what the answer is going to be.
Right. And with this guy, I said, hey, here's the deal. Come to ICOR, come to Breakfast Club, come to more badass meetings, go to Bigger Pockets. There are people out there that will do this with you. And then we talked about it. I said, you got to be real careful, though. You got to do your due diligence and everything else. But, that's a whole nother topic. And we've been talking for 45 minutes. Or 46 minutes.
So is that your cue to me to wrap things up?
I think we got to wrap things up because people are going to be like, oh my God, they're talking for so long. We haven't had a commercial or anything. We're taking a break.
Yeah. So well, we'll start wrapping things up. I said, guys, we started this first show with an idea. We didn't spend a lot of stuff scripting out. We wrote some ideas down. We wanted to chat. We've got a couple comments in there from people. And so we just want to build this going forward. So a lot of people just commenting on some of the stories we shared, saying thank you. We appreciate you guys joining us for the first event. We'll be doing more of these. They'll be getting better. And Tim, let me ask you this. We're talking about asking questions here and all this stuff. What do you want to get out of this new talk show we're doing? Let's put it out there on air. That'll be my answer.
All right.
Go first.
I really want to use this as an ability to show people how to invest the right way and learn how to invest the right way. I want to keep people out of trouble. I want them to kind of I want to help people learn how to do this the right way in a local way. There are tons of information out there from DIY Network and HGTV, and there are all these groups coming through Facebook. I'm sure we're going to have an ad on Facebook about a group coming in from out of town. I want people to know there are local resources here that know how to teach you and know how to build wealth. I also want to be on the beach in about 8 years from now, hanging out, fishing every day, and with half of you guys coming up and seeing me, and we're like, yeah, we got mailbox money. We're doing good. And I want to encourage everybody to do that and encourage everybody to give back. Take people on the journey with you and really give back to people on this, because I've gotten so much out of this business in this life. I want to give back, and this is what I love to do.
That was a great answer. It's a hard one to follow up, Tim, but what I want to get out of this is, I'm always I call myself a student for life. Like, I'm really good at a couple things, and the majority of stuff out there, I'm not an expert at it. I don't believe anyone can be an expert in more than a few things in life or in business or investing or whatever. So I want to do this because it's always like a way for me to learn. Like, I can learn from you and your property management experience. I can learn from our marijuana lawyers. I can learn from all the other people I have on here in the future. I want to network as well, because I think this is such a cool way to network, like with our guests, but also people on Facebook and the webinar, like get to know the people out there and just really start building, having those things feed into a local community. And it goes back to what you're saying. It's to make sure people know what resources are available, because there's a ton of great, very high level stuff that gets people into real estate investing, but real estate is all local. And you need the local knowledge, you need the local expertise, you need the local this, you need the local that. And I think it's a great way to get people plugged into people doing stuff locally versus a lot of those national programs that are, come in for a weekend and leave a weekend, the next weekend.
Yeah. Locality is perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to have people on. And, guys, we also are doing this for our businesses. We have to make money. So, Chris is a great real estate agent, has a big background in rentals and flips and building long-term wealth. My business is coaching, mentoring people on a local level, hands-on for a year. Also, ICOR, the investment community of the Rockies, is a huge opportunity, and we're trying to build it and expand it and grow it and make it so it's a great resource, a local resource. Plus, there are all kinds of other resources out of there. out there, other groups, and we're all good. We all have our niches, and we all have the information. I just want to make sure that you guys do it right and do it smartly. So is smartly a word?
It is now.
It is now.
Yeah.
So
even
Chris,
if you write
great.
that on the whiteboard, we'll get a whiteboard in here eventually we're talking about, or a PowerPoint board or something. You write it on the whiteboard. It's a word. Then.
It's a word.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'll give you that.
All right. Good.
All right, guys, we'll wrap this up. Tim, thank you, man. I'm looking forward to doing a lot more of these in 2019.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So everybody spread the word. Share this with everybody. Spotify it. Do whatever you do in the podcast world to make us famous, right?
Exactly. All right, everyone. Have a great day. We'll see for the next show, and we'll see you guys real soon.
And go out and do a deal.
Oh, I like that.
This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yes.
50 minutes flew by.
I don't think we're done yet.
No? Are we still there? Or we're supposed to do the Ron Burgundy thing?
Yeah, I'll give you a teleprompter to read. Like, what?